In a few days, we're celebrating a birthday. America's birthday. And America is turning 250 years old. How about that? Huh? They're getting there. They're getting up to my age. We're going to see fireworks, parades, cookouts. It's going to be awesome. But there's a freedom, another kind of freedom that no government can give, no government can take away. And that is the freedom that Christ brings us. Because you can live in the freest nation on earth and still be imprisoned by fear. Did you know that? You can live in the freest nation on earth and still be imprisoned by fear. That's why in Galatians 5, verse 1, it says, "For freedom Christ set us free. Stand firm then, and don't submit again to a yoke of slavery." You can have every right imaginable and still be enslaved to something like pornography. You can have unlimited choices and still be chained to anxiety. You can make your own decisions every day and still be controlled by other people's opinions. And you can live in the freest nation on earth and still be imprisoned by fear. A lot of us live in prison. You might think your house is a prison, the way your parents run it. I used to think that. Anybody? No, don't put your hand up. But a lot of us do live in a prison. I'm not talking about Alcatraz, the one out on the West Coast. I'm not talking about that. It's not a physical prison. The chains that I'm talking about that are holding you captive are invisible, that no one else can see. You might have walked into this room smiling while carrying chains no one else knows about. Some of us have learned to hide our prison that we're in behind humor, that's me, behind Instagram filters, behind "I'm fine." And when we choose to live in prison, we are forgetting what Jesus came to this earth to do. This is a common misconception. Jesus never came just to make bad people good. He came to make dead people alive. The whole point of this is not to make you good. It's to make you alive. He came to set you free. And that's what Paul's getting at in Galatians. But before we even touch this verse, we have to understand where Paul has been, right? Because if you want to understand Galatians 5, you need to understand what? Galatians 1, 2, 3, 4. You got to put it in context to understand what Paul's talking about. For 4 chapters, Paul has been fighting and proclaiming one truth. If you've been at Deep Dive, you already know what I'm talking about here. Paul has been saying for 4 chapters, you are not saved by what you do, you are saved by what Christ has done. You're not saved by what you do, by your effort, by your performance, by your success, by your popularity. None of that can save you. The only thing that can save you is what Christ has already done. The churches that Paul's writing to in this area called Galatia, where the Galatians lived, makes sense? Yeah? They had started believing the gospel, but then there were teachers that came in after Paul and started teaching a false gospel to them. They started teaching these people in Galatia that Jesus is good, but he's not enough. They said, believe in Jesus, but you also have to keep that law that was in the Old Testament that God gave to Moses. They said, yes, there's grace, but you also have to add your performance on top of that. They said, yes, there's faith, but you also have to add your works. And Paul spends 4 chapters saying, no. If you have to add anything to Jesus, you've lost Jesus altogether. And now chapter 5, in Galatians begins with the result of the gospel. Because once you finally understand grace, then you can start understanding freedom. He said in verse 1, "For freedom Christ set us free." I'm going to blow your mind here. The Greek word for freedom here, do you know what it means? Any guesses? No guesses? It means freedom. Never would have guessed it, right? But freedom in what sense? He's talking about release from bondage, a release from slavery. And what he's saying here is kind of shocking. He's saying Jesus didn't simply free you from something, he freed you for something. For freedom, Christ set us free. You have been set free for something. Notice he didn't say Christ set us free because we earned it. He didn't say Christ set us free after we got our act together. He did not say Christ set us free because we promised we'd never mess up again. What did he say? He said Christ set us free, period. Freedom starts with him and not us. That's important, that freedom starts with God. And he's saying that if you're not living in this freedom, you are subjecting yourself into a type of slavery. The Galatians, they lived in the Roman world. They knew slavery better than we do. A slave in that time had no identity apart from his master, right? No independent future, no ownership. His life belonged to someone else. But occasionally in this culture, a wealthy person would purchase a slave only to immediately give them papers declaring you're free. They would buy someone as a slave and then immediately say, I bought you so that I could free you and you wouldn't be a slave anymore. No strings attached, no payment required. They didn't buy themselves, they couldn't. Someone else paid the price. And I'm telling you right now, that is the gospel. Jesus did not negotiate your freedom. He knew the price, and he paid it. He didn't pay it with silver or gold. He paid it with his blood. And because of that, you and I can be free. Now, one crazy moment in history that I think ties in really well to how a lot of Christians live today is that there were some people in the 1800s, after we abolished slavery, that there were still people living in that. Did you know that? It took like 3 years after it was abolished for word to get all the way around the country. And so there were people living as slaves 3 years after the law was taken out. They had been free, but they did not know it. They had been free, but were still living like slaves. And I'm telling you, so many Christians are doing exactly that right now. Christ has declared you free. He has already declared you free, but you still live like prisoners. He broke the door off the prison cell that had you for all of eternity. He broke it. And he said, you are free now. And even with the open door to the cell, you choose, I'm actually going to stay in here. That makes no sense, right? Yet I see it so many times in the lives of young people, even myself sometimes. I see that I somehow am perfectly content just staying imprisoned by fear, insecurity, stress. I just stay locked up. There's some believers who have been redeemed, but they still define themselves by their failures. I still remember played church league basketball all the way through high school. And we had 10 games in the regular season. We went to the playoffs. We went 9-1, and then we won the whole thing. We won the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah, we got the t-shirt. We can talk about it. And my friends and I, we still get together at like weddings and stuff, and we'll talk about it. But you know what we talk about the most is not all the games we won. What do we talk about? The one game we lost. And how there's no way we should have lost that game. All that success, right? 9-1, we went 3 playoff games, so we really went 12-1. We lifted the trophy. It's still like in the youth room at the church I grew up in. And all we can talk about is that one loss. That at the end of the day didn't mean anything. It's because these failures stick with us sometimes more than successes do. That's a common trick the devil will try to play on you. You might be crushing it in your walk with God. You might be having that quiet time every day. It might be like the Bible is practically levitating by the Spirit in front of you. I'm kidding. But it might feel like that sometimes, where it's like you're praying to God and the clouds part and He writes it in the sky. This is what I want you. Like you might feel that close to God. And then you lay down at night and all you can think about is that one embarrassing thing that happened to you at school a few weeks ago. Yeah? So many of us, we define ourselves by our failures. And the devil will use that to keep you in this prison by making you think, I'll always struggle. I'll never change. This is who I am now. I guess sin is just my identity. And yes, sin may be your struggle, but it's not your identity because you have been set free. What does Paul say next? He says, stand firm. Stand firm. The language he's using here is a military type language, okay? We just talked about fight through the month of June. That was our word of the month in June. Picture like a Roman soldier. This is the picture he's painting. You got your feet planted, your shield raised. You're not retreating. You're not surrendering. He's saying you got to stand firm. Your freedom has to be defended because everything in this world wants to pull you back into that prison, pull you back into the slavery of sin. He says, stand firm then and don't submit again. He's talking to Christians here, right? Meaning, even after they met Jesus, they began living like they never met him. I see this all the time in youth ministry. We have a big moment, whether it's at a retreat or it's on a Wednesday night. I see spiritual formation taking place in you guys, and then it seems like a month later that one decision, that one night didn't even happen. So many of us, after meeting Jesus, we begin living like we never met him. And I'm not saying like you lost your salvation or anything. I'm not saying that. You don't lose your salvation, but you can lose your joy. You can lose your confidence. You can lose your peace. And you can definitely lose your freedom. And that's why he says, stand firm and don't submit again to a yoke of slavery. Do you know what a yoke means in the Bible? Anybody? You know? Do you actually? Yeah? Tell me. Huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, you got it. You got it. This yoke, it was placed across the necks of oxen when they were out working in the field. It controlled where they walked, how they moved, what direction they went in, right? It controlled everything. And Paul's saying, do not voluntarily put that yoke back on. Do not voluntarily step back in and say, I'll put this burden back on myself. The burden that Jesus placed on his shoulders on the cross. You know what? I'm actually going to take that off of him and put it back on me. Does that make any sense? Yet we live this way all the time. This yoke, it would control them where they walked. It would pull them in different directions. I want to know what's pulling on your heart tonight. What's steering your life? Because everyone is being led by something. Whether that's approval or lust, money, success, sports, fear, anxiety, social media, the expectations of people around you. We're all being led by something. But the question isn't, am I being led? The question is, who's holding the rope? Who am I connecting myself to? Who am I allowing to pull on the strings of my heart? Our enemy will try to trick you with the things of this world and make you think that freedom means something totally different. We kind of touched on this in small groups. The world says freedom is doing whatever you want. The Bible says doing whatever you want is actually the fastest road to slavery. Have you ever thought about that? That you doing whatever you want is exactly the reason Jesus had to go to the cross in the first place? Because when we get to do whatever we want, we will not do the right thing. Our flesh will not allow us. Our heart is deceitful and will lead us astray. Freedom is not about doing whatever you want. Whatever you repeatedly obey, whoever you repeatedly obey, that's the one that eventually owns you. It promises freedom, then it gives you chains. It promises satisfaction, but then leaves you empty. It promises you identity, and then it steals who you are. But Jesus offers something better. He doesn't say, clean yourself up, then come to me. What does he say? He just says, come to me. I love that. Because the cross wasn't built for people who had it all together. It was built for ones in bondage. People who couldn't free themselves. That's why the gospel is such good news. Because if your freedom depended on you and your performance, you'd lose it every day. But if your freedom depends on Christ, then your hope rests on someone stronger than you. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I can hope in someone stronger than I am. Because I'm not all that strong. I might look it. I know I'm completely ripped. But I'm not that strong, guys. I'm so glad I can put my hope and my trust in someone who is stronger than I am. And so, as we begin to apply this and kind of wrap up tonight, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, what is trying to own me? Not just what do I struggle with, but what has my heart began to obey more quickly than Jesus? I've said this a lot. You want to know how much faith you have? How about the next time God tells you to do something, the time between him telling you to do something and you doing something, that's how big your faith is. If God speaks and you obey immediately, that's big faith. If God talks to you immediately and you have to rationalize everything and you have to think through all the different scenarios before you obey, that shows little faith. But there are things in this life that we obey much more quickly than Jesus. It might be your phone. It might be your friends. It might be a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It might be the pressure to be perfect. It might be your anger or fear, or this constant need to be accepted. But whatever keeps whispering to you and telling you, you can't live without me, that's a terrible master. Because only Jesus can say, you can't live without me, and actually be telling the truth. And so this month, as we talk about being free, I want you to know this is not about behavior modification. This isn't about just trying harder. It's not about becoming a better Christian. It's about discovering what Jesus actually died to give you. Not just forgiveness, but freedom. Not just heaven someday, but freedom today. From this point on in Galatians, it's really cool. I can't wait to teach it in deep dive, but the rest of the book flows from that verse right there. Because you cannot walk by the Spirit if you don't first believe you're free. You cannot bear the fruit of the Spirit in your life if you're still living like a slave. You cannot serve others in love if you're chained by your own desires. You can't do it. You have to rest in the freedom that Christ brings, because freedom is the foundation of the Christian life. It is the foundation. And if you don't understand that you're free, you're never going to understand how to actually live for God in this world. So over the next few weeks, we're going to ask some tough questions. What are the chains we don't even realize we're wearing? Why do I still struggle with sin? How do I actually walk in freedom and not just talk about it? And how do I stay free? We're going to be answering all those questions over the next few weeks. And every week we're going to keep coming back to what Jesus did and seeing that I cannot rest in what I've done. I can only rest in what He's done. Because He didn't die just to improve your life. He came to make you free. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Stand firm then and don't submit again to a yoke of slavery. You are to stand in that freedom, fight for that freedom, and never forget the price that Jesus paid for that freedom.